in STEM series. We wanted to most definitely have a feature session where we can hear from our folks at NSF on various funding opportunities. One of the things that we have uncovered as we have been doing this work over the last year and some is that not a lot of folks are aware of the different funding opportunities in order to help further their research interest and ideas. And so it was very important for us to be able to invite in NSF, who through some of what they're doing has helped us to be able to host this conference so that folks can learn about these various funding opportunities, and so that our Breaking Barriers Network can continue to provide some level of support in helping with the pursuits of sponsored research and grant funding. I want to take this time to turn it over to our NSF folks. I know we have 3 program officers here with us this afternoon, Dr. Diarra, Dr. Camacho, and Dr. Smith. I didn't have a particular order in regards to who goes first. So please feel free to unmute yourself. I don't know if you wanted to get us kicked off, Dr. Diarra. And I hope I'm saying the last name correctly.
Diarra is great.
Okay.
And I don't know if Tori is online yet. If not, I will go ahead and start with a presentation on advance. And my colleague Tatiana Camacho is not joining us right now because we both work with advance and there's no need for both of us to be here. So how much time did you want to spend on presentation versus discussion?
It's up to you. We're flexible.
Okay. Well, I'm happy to take questions as we go. So if you have a way to let me know when there's a question from the audience, go ahead and interrupt. All right. So thank you for having me to tell you a little bit more about the ADVANCE program at the National Science Foundation. It's actually not an acronym like the INCLUDES acronym is, which is a nice, long, complicated acronym. It's actually just the word ADVANCE. We're focused on addressing systemic equity issues for STEM faculty, focused on gender equity issues. And I'll tell you more about the program and the program model in a few slides, but I wanted to make sure that I stopped and explained why this slide has both men and women on it, because the point here of this program is to change the institution. And that means everybody at the institution needs to be involved in making institutional changes in order for the culture and climate to be improved for all STEM faculty. Both men and women have to be involved in the implementation and in the change efforts. So this is very purposeful that we include both men and women in the photos here. Okay, so the ADVANCE program is basically designed to address the systemic inequities that social and behavioral sciences have identified in organizations like institutions of higher education. We know that there are cultures and climates within organizations. We know that policies, practices, and procedures are not indifferent to gender and race, ethnicity, etc. And that the institution of scientific education and research has had hundreds of years to develop a culture that we have right now. And it has not been inclusive of diverse individuals in that system. And as a result, people who are trying to work in that system, who are women or underrepresented racial and ethnic minorities, experience various kinds of barriers to their full success and participation, and may even not choose to go into this career in the first place because of the culture and climate of the workplace. So ADVANCE is trying to fix the workplace so that more women, more underrepresented racial and ethnic minorities will choose to become STEM faculty at all kinds of institutions, not just research institutions, community colleges, teaching institutions included in our effort. So the grant program is to an institution to make changes to how they operate as an organization. We typically see changes in policies, practices, and procedures, and also efforts to improve culture and climate, efforts to provide new knowledge to individuals about issues of diversity, equity, inclusion, etc. And we'll talk a little bit more about some of the grant programs that you could participate in under Advance. Okay, so systemic and organizational change factors that an advanced grant might focus on include these in the slide. And one of the ways to remember how Advance is different than maybe some other programs is that we're focusing on fixing the systems and the organization rather than fixing the individuals. Our approach is that the individuals, there's nothing to be fixed. They've gotten their PhD, they've demonstrated they can do this work, that they're interested in teaching and doing research. So there's no fixing that needs to be done for those individuals. Rather, the system and the organization that they are seeking employment in or that they are working in needs to rethink how it operates so that it can be more inclusive and welcoming. And so we know that there has been issues in various institutions about transparency, consistency, and clarity on tenure and promotion policies, hiring processes, and all of those things lead to potential reliance on implicit biases and sometimes explicit biases that keep the diversity of our faculty fairly low compared to those who have PhDs and are ready to go into academia. So grant programs from Advance would focus on addressing any gender inequities that they've found in these areas based on their institutional data. So an example of an equity issue is salary inequities. And I share this with you because I wanted to make clear that we're not, with this program, we're not putting more people into the system. We want to change the system before we do that. So an equity issue might exist even if you had full representation. So even in a very diverse institution that has 50% women, let's say, in every STEM department, they still might have gender-based inequities, such as salary disparities, such as access to resources, policies around allocating teaching assistants and research assistants and service workload distribution, things like that. So equity issues can exist even if you have representation. So that's important to keep in mind when you're thinking about what you might want to do with an advanced grant. So there are actually four different kinds of advanced grants. There's the Catalyst grants, the adaptation, and the institutional transformation grants. And all of these are focused on a single institution of higher education and addressing the organization itself at various levels of intensity. So the Catalyst grant is a self-assessment grant where you can get $300,000 to collect institutional data, to have the time and bandwidth to study it and analyze it, to think about intersectionality in terms of your populations on your campus, and then develop a 5-year strategic plan for faculty equity. So it's kind of like a planning grant. It's an opportunity for institutions that may not have very well-resourced institutional research offices or other kinds of offices that might be able to do this data collection for the institution without a grant. So this is something to think about if you think you want to pursue this work, but don't yet know where your equity issues lie and how you might address them. The Catalyst grant might be something of interest to you. The adaptation is like the step up from the Catalyst, meaning that if you already know what your equity issues are, you could get the adaptation for $1 million to actually implement changes at your institution based on that data that you have already collected in order to make changes at your institution. And in this case, you would be adapting strategies that others have developed at their institutions to achieve systemic change. And then the other option is an institutional transformation, which is $3 million over 5 years. And this one is larger and longer because this one requires innovation and development in the actual strategies themselves. So rather than adapting what others have developed, you'd be developing new strategies to address equity issues focused on gender, right? So if it wouldn't be just implementing implicit bias training for your chair, your search committee chairs, because that is something that other institutions are already doing. And there's various ways to do that. And there's literature on how to do that. But it would be developing a new strategy for addressing an issue that you have at your institution. I have one more type of grant that I'll share. Kizzy, if my colleague from NSF is on yet, so that she can share information about her programs, okay? I also want to point out that Advance will support work that is not within an institution of higher education, but is maybe with professional societies or other organizations that are related to STEM faculty, culture, and climate. So for example, you might belong to a professional organization and you go to an annual conference, et cetera. That organization has some influence over the culture and climate of your discipline area. So you could get an adaptation grant to work within that discipline to make changes in and improve equity in that discipline area. You can also partner with multiple institutions or organizations to do a partnership grant and scale up the work that others have done. So for example, you might partner with your statewide system to make some changes for everybody in your state with a partnership project. And I'm happy to take questions. I just don't want to take up all the time by talking. And I want to give enough time to the next speaker. So I'll take a break here. I'll stop sharing.
I did have one question. The date that we saw, the due dates for these grants are all 2021. So they are renewable for 2022.
Yes, the current solicitation is good until 2022. And it has annual dates. So they're recurring. Okay. So and we also have target dates for a few of our tracks, the Catalyst track in particular, where there's no deadline, basically. We'll take a proposal anytime during the year. But having said that, we only have money a few times during the year. So you might want to let us know that you're thinking about a proposal for one of for the Catalyst, so we can tell you the time frame that might be useful for you to submit the proposal when we still would have access to funds. Okay.
So the normal practice of contacting the program officer before.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes. And we welcome that. Please let us know by email and we will set up a Zoom meeting and as soon as possible. Right now is not a good time for a Zoom meeting, but in January, it'll be much better.
Thank you.
I do have a question as well. You mentioned that this is not just open for institutions of higher education, that some professional organizations or I don't know if, can you share a little bit about who else might be able to apply for these types of grants and if it requires any kind of collaboration or?
Sure. Let me see if I can share with you some examples of projects. I have a slide here. So you can see the preview version of this. This is fine. It has this Me Too project that we supported that was focused originally on trying to mitigate harassment in the field. I'm sorry, that the advanced geo was mitigating harassment in the field in geosciences, and they have since expanded that to several other disciplines in terms of their intervention, which is bystander training. And so this was led by it involves several of the geoscience professional societies. And then the Me Too Poli-Sci was also similar, but focused on poli-sci. And again, it's through their professional society in political science, but the grant was to the individual who was at a university. So like you might be an executive or might be on the president of an organization, but so then the grant might come through your university rather through the organization. But we have examples of both. So we also, like another example might be the ASEE, which is doing work with engineering deans across the country to encourage and support them to implement equitable policies and practices as well.
Okay, so like I want to throw out an example. So we have like a STEM Equity Alliance organization in Pennsylvania, and they're doing some work in regards to equitable practices, especially in the workforce, what might need to get done for diversifying the workforce more along the lines of STEM, and starting that very early. So I'm wondering if that might be a good example, if they were to, if we had somebody at one of our universities who was a part of that alliance, and can then apply for, submit a project proposal accordingly, based on that.
Yes, potentially. The caveat for the advanced grants is that there needs to be some impact on STEM academic careers and equity for STEM faculty. So if the organization in Pennsylvania is focused, on industry, for example, it wouldn't necessarily fit with advance. But I would be happy to talk to somebody about an idea you might have, because there are other programs at NSF where something might fit. Even the Includes program for one, for sure. Which is not limited to STEM faculty. That's the benefit of Includes.
Yeah. I think we have one of our participants in the chat who's asking if you could put up your last slide again. I guess there was some information on there that he's interested in. On
the two examples? Is that
I think prior to that.
Or the information on the types of projects.
Yeah.
Here. I think that was the last slide we shared. And again, these dates are annual. So we should have another deadline around the same time for these tracks. And even if we do a new solicitation, there should be very similar options in the next solicitation and very similar deadlines. And if anything, if we do a new solicitation, you'll have more time to submit rather than less.
Okay.
Okay. Is this the slide that they wanted?
I believe so.
Okay, great. And also happy to share the slides or point you in the right direction for the website, which there are quite a few recorded webinars on preparing proposals for the adaptation track and the partnership track and the catalyst track. We haven't yet created one for the IT track, but those webinars can be hopefully a quick way to find out if a project you're thinking of might fit with one of those options.
Okay. I think you're okay if you wanted to continue. I believe Dr. Smith might be encountering some issues with another meeting, but
my colleague from NSF.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, so it would be nice to know in the audience who is. Did you want me to continue talking about NSF opportunities or advance?
It would be good to find out a little bit more about some opportunities. I don't know. I would probably ask the audience now if they had any specific questions. I don't
Yeah.
want to dominate the question piece.
Yeah, if it would be helpful if like in the chat, if you put in like topics of research that you are interested in doing, and then I could potentially see if I know of potential programs I could point you to. So in the Directorate of Education and Human Resources, we have various projects and programs. So for example, many of you might be interested in improving undergraduate education in the sciences and engineering, for example. And so the Improving Undergraduate STEM Education program, the IHES program, would be of interest to you, where you could do changes and study those changes in order to not evaluate, but do research on those changes to understand the impact on learning outcomes or retention or whatever kinds of factors you're trying to improve by your curriculum changes. So I just wanted to let you know about that. We also have opportunities that if you are thinking about going into education research, but you haven't had the chance to do that, you have an idea that you would like to build on, there is the program called the Building Capacity in Science Education Research program, or BICSR. And that one you can apply for essentially research initiation funds, so that you can partner with a social scientist or a STEM education researcher to put together pilot data or other kinds of, or to get professional development for yourself, et cetera, so that you can eventually submit a STEM education research proposal to one of the regular programs at NSF. So I'm just throwing out things that I think you might be interested in. Let's see, GK-12 program is not around anymore. What we have now is the National Research Traineeship program, which has some features from GK-12, but it is not connected to K-12 anymore. National Research Traineeship is also similar to the, what did they used to have? The IGERT, I think that's the program. So yeah, the GK-12 program is no longer around, but if you're looking for K-12 opportunities, there's very few programs at NSF that provide programming dollars to do programs. Most of the funding is to do research, to add to our basic knowledge, to test theories, to replicate findings, to develop new tools and metrics or methods for doing research or evaluation in education. But it's not to like implement a program like like a K-12 kind of opportunity for exposure to graduate students like GK-12 had as part of its components. So let's see, there was a question about arts, kinesthetic movement, and STEM embodiment on STEM education. So for arts work, you know, to do something around arts and STEM, you might want to look at the Advancing Informal Science Learning program at NSF, which is ASL. And that program also has a research component, but you can do programming and study it. So informal science might be the program for doing something in that area that you were mentioning. Okay. Let's see, anybody else? Has anybody been a reviewer for NSF? Yeah, it's great. That is a good way to get to know a program. So if you wanted to check out whether or not you wanted to submit a proposal to the, let's say, the informal science program, you could volunteer to be a reviewer for that program and see what kind of proposals they fund firsthand. And also do your service to NSF in selecting the grant proposals that we will fund and support. And usually volunteer by contacting one of the program officers, giving them a very short 2-page CV and explaining why you're interested in being a reviewer. So if you just send a email that says, my CV is attached, I'd like to review, it may not be as effective as saying, I'm very interested in potentially doing research along these lines, and I'd like to be a reviewer so that I can see what this program supports. And then that's more likely to get you a call back. Yeah. So was Tori going to talk about includes?
I believe she was gonna give us some information about career.
Oh, career. Okay, so career is a good program. I am not a career program officer, but I can tell you in general what it's about if you would. Okay.
That would be helpful.
Yeah, so career is an acronym. It stands for something, which I don't remember, but it's career advancement, essentially. And every directorate in the foundation will take career proposals from faculty that are early in their academic career. So there's definitions of what that means in the solicitation. Might not be the same thing as what you think it means. So you do want to look at that solicitation to make sure you qualify to be in your early career period to apply. But it is meant to be a catalyst for scientists in the early part of their academic research career. And so it is quite a good launching pad for a research career. And you can do that in chemistry, biology, education, whatever your research area is. All over the foundation, you can get a career grant. So this includes STEM education research for the education directorate, and we encourage you to consider it. There's proposal deadlines, I believe October, November kind of time frame every year. And I do think that you are limited in the number of times you can revise and resubmit. So you want, but that you shouldn't wait to submit until the last time you are eligible. You should submit every year that you are eligible so that you can get the feedback from the proposals. People normally have to submit 2 to 3 times to get a grant from NSF. So there's you need to go through that first step and potentially get that first decline in order to get the grant. So it's informative because you learn from the feedback. You also then have the ability to talk to the program officer who gave you the feedback and talk to them more about what you could do differently in your next proposal. There's a contact basically at NSF for you. And it is something that you shouldn't avoid. You do need to go through that first proposal, whether or not it's an award or not. And you'd be surprised, some people get the award on the first time. So, John, you had a question?
Yeah, I wanted to take advantage. Thank you, Jesse, for all these really helpful things. The career award, my impression, I'm a geoscientist, is that, and I think this is true across the foundation, so I wanted to kind of share it with this group. There's a very significant emphasis on the broader impacts component with really well thought out, ideas for measuring and paying attention to the broader impacts. It's not just sort of an appendage. And so this community, because that's justice, equity, diversity, and inclusion, is so at the forefront of why we're gathered. Do I have that correct? That's a very important dimension?
Right. So it's not necessarily it's not technically more important than intellectual merit, because both of the criteria at NSF are, equal. They can be equal. But let's see, but your point is well taken in that there is a component that's expected in career where you're integrating your research with your education. And that's part of broader impacts that you would talk about in your proposal. And so there is an expectation that you're getting your research done, but you're also improving, enhancing your education in your classroom, right? So that's part of career, which is great because that is something that many people want to do, when they're doing a lot of teaching, right? So, let's see. The other thing I wanted to let you know is that when I say we support STEM education research, we also support diversity, equity, and inclusion research. So if you're doing research on why we have 60% women undergraduates enrolled now in our institutions, but we still only have 20% of them in STEM. You have a research question around diversity in STEM, you can use that as a career proposal research topic. Okay. And the same thing with the BICSR, STEM education, that can focus on broadening participation, diversity, equity, inclusion research questions. And we also support workforce research questions. Or areas of investigation. So, and then we also have the informal science program, and we have the Discovery Research K-12 program if you're interested in K-12 learning and learning outcomes. It's a little bit less straightforward to navigate, but we do have 4 divisions in the education directorate by topical area. So 1 undergraduate, 1 graduate, 1 research and learning, and 1 broadening participation. But you can find a little bit of all of that in all 4 of our divisions. So we're pretty interdisciplinary. And most program officers at NSF will be able to either point you in the right direction or talk to you about some idea that you might have that you're looking for, where it would fit at NSF. So.
I think one of the questions that I often have is, so you apply for a grant, there's a deadline that you have to submit to. While you are developing your project proposal, you of course want to outline when you're going to get things started and what's not. And so sometimes, how do you know when you would be able to hear back from the grant? Is it a 6-month review process? So then should I start, when I draft my project proposal, should I project out that, I wouldn't hear back for another 6 months and then start it in fall 22?
Yeah. The 6 months return time is generous for our process, but that's our goal, to give you notice of the award in 6 months or the decline, so that you can make plans for the next step. So, but you can negotiate your start date when somebody might be offering you an award. So if they come to you and it's in the middle of the semester and you can no longer get buy yourself out of a course, you can say, can I get this started on January 1 instead of November 1? And that sort of thing can be adjusted and negotiated to some degree. So we can, I know ideally it would be 6 months after you submit your proposal that you could start your project. But there might be better times than other times. Like you might want to start at the beginning of the semester or beginning of summer, and so that you have lead time to get ready, those kinds of things. You should tell us what your ideal start time is in your proposal, and then at the point where we're negotiating for a potential award, you can mention that, well, this start time won't work anymore. So can I do it this one?
Okay, that's good to know.
Mhm.
Because I know sometimes, you've worked with your grant office and release time and all that sort of stuff. They've already budgeted and what's not. So yeah, okay.
Yeah,
That's good.
absolutely. Yeah. So, and we also have no cost extensions. So you can also start your project without actually, starting the full implementation phase. So you can have a startup phase, knowing that you could extend your project up to 12 months.
Okay.
Mm.
Okay. Do we have any other questions for Dr. Diarra? This is very, very helpful. Thank you for even giving us some insights into some of those other programs.
Absolutely.
well.
I'm happy to help you navigate NSF, which is not that straightforward to navigate. If you have great ideas, I would love to see them funded and supported. So we'll try to help when I can, or point you to somebody else who can.
I did have one question regarding some of the grants opportunities you shared. Are these primarily submitted through grants.gov
Mm.
or FastLane, or we have both options?
Okay, so it depends on the program at NSF right now. So most of them can go through both FastLane and grants.gov right now. Some of them can also go through research.gov, which I hear is a better version of FastLane and a better version than grants.gov. Grants.gov is always, I think, not recommended by many people at NSF because the translation between their system and our system doesn't go as smoothly. And you want to submit early in that program for grants.gov. Whereas FastLane, research.gov, you have a little, you can submit the day of and feel confident you'll get it in. But not that I'm recommending that, because you never know what's going to happen. You got to get it into your sponsored research office, however many weeks before, et cetera. So, but I would say research.gov is the way to go if that's an option. And then FastLane, if research.gov is not an option.
Okay, that's helpful.
Yeah. And it actually, I would imagine that NSF will be having some outreach efforts to help sponsored research offices navigate research.gov as it becomes the more the system that we rely on to do all of our work for NSF. So keep an eye out for those kinds of training opportunities.
Thank you.
If there are no other questions for Dr. Diarra, I am going to post in our chat the link to our next session, where we are actually going to be hearing from some funded researchers on their different pathway in terms of applying for funding and getting funding, and hearing some tips and what's not in regards to, how they might be able to assist with, lessons that they've learned that they can share out to folks in order to help them to do this. Part of what we are trying to do here, Dr. Diarra, with our Breaking Barriers network, is to help generate some more applications, to help point folks, that let people know about the various opportunities, especially amongst our communities of color. Mm-hmm. To help them with their scholarship and with the development of their research ideas and interests, in order to be able to translate that into a sponsored project. So I'm very grateful for you coming and sharing about various opportunities that NSF has. And we will make sure that this gets out to our network, and be as supportive as we can in terms of getting more people to apply for these opportunities and collaborating on working on these opportunities.
Great. Yeah, happy to be here. And, thank you for doing all of the work organizing this and, working on this access issue to federal grants. I think it's really important. And we would really like to see more, in particular, STEM education research coming from minority serving institutions, teaching institutions, et cetera, because their contribution is important, and I think can add to what we know works, and then do better for everybody.
All right. Thanks,
Thank
everyone.
you.
I posted in the chat a link. You can just click on the link and you'll be able to head over to our next session, which starts in probably less than a minute. So I'll see you guys over there.